Hello, chess friends, and welcome to the Art of Chess channel, and welcome to the TCEC Season 20 Superfinal between the two top engines, Leela C0 and Stockfish NNUE. So, the Premier Division is over. Leela C0 and Stockfish NNUE finished the Premier Division with the same point count. Now they're meeting in the finals, and again, the result is equal. I think we'll have a great Superfinal because it has never been so equal in the TCEC history. Many times we have seen that one engine is so much stronger than the other engine, but now in this season 20 we have, I think, a very equal super final. Only two winning games have been played in the same prearranged line that prepared, of course, by the TCEC. It's in the Nimzo-Indian, and I think this line is really wild. We have also sort of a theoretical novelty here because there is this dubious line, and I'm not even sure if you should go into this line if you're human, because this game is so tactical, tactics really all over the board. But I think it's playable. Maybe what the TCEC has found here, this is really an aggressive line. I think many humans would struggle against this opening. It is a exchange sacrifice in the beginning, but it's really wild. We prepared a really great game by both engines. As I said, Stockfish and NNUE won also the game with the white pieces, and also Leela C0 in the exact same line. So as usual in the top engine games, we have the sound round one and this Mortal Kombat sound. So white. So D4 here by Stockfish and NNUE, knight to f6. This was, of course, still prearranged. We'll come to that moment when the engines have to calculate the position for themselves. But still, I wanted to talk about some theory about the Nimzo-Indian. It's very important to understand also the first couple of moves, although they are prearranged. After move c4, e6, knight to c3, and bishop to b4, we have the Nimzo-Indian setup. And when I faced many times the Nimzo-Indian from my perspective, when I used to play these lines with c4, now I'm playing some counter Nimzo-Indian setups with knight to f3, I most often play the move e3, and the move e3 gives us, I think, a very nice flexibility. We don't challenging immediately the bishop with the move a3. If a3, bishop to c3, b takes c3, still this is playable for both sides, but I think white is many times not satisfied with the immediate outcome of this particular line. So that's why the move e3 comes with this very important idea. We want to develop our bishop to d3 and then remaneuver a knight here to e2. Then after bishop to c3, we could then have another knight and we can recapture with the knight on c3. The most important thing about this flexibility of the move knight to e2 is, in some occasions you see black is trying b6, bishop to b7, and then black is trying to cement the knight around the square e4, which is the most pragmatic idea of the Nimzo-Indian from black's perspective. But with the move knight to e2, instead of, for instance, knight to f3, the potential knight outpost on e4 can be kicked away with the potential f3 move. This is very important to recognize. Of course, you have to first castle and then you can play the move f3. But it's really, I think, a very nice setup here for white. If black takes now immediately, okay, after b takes c3, this position has been also played many times, but at least we haven't lost the tempo here with the move a3, in which we have challenged the bishop. Now, okay, we can again play something like bishop to d3, knight to e2, and if again the knight comes, castling, and then f3 is perfectly fine. We'll find maybe with a4, a5, and bishop to a3 a nice diagonal for our dark square bishop, because in some occasions the dark square bishop of white has really troubles to go somewhere because of this pawn structure, c3, d4, and e3. So this is simple theory. As I said, main goal is to play bishop to d3 and then knight to e2 and then recapture with the knight after potential a3 move. So here, castling, we have this idea: bishop to d3, b6, and now comes e4. Really wild stuff already, because this is not the most aggressive line which white is choosing. There are these lines: knight to e2, if bishop to b7, then we can play f3, kingside castling, and again play something like a3, b4, bishop to b2, and play maybe a flexible game. But here in the game, after move e4, we have bishop to b7. Still, this pawn is challenged because there is the spin against this knight, so we cannot calculate this knight as a defender of this pawn. If you try f3, then you could mess really things up, because d5 is a very nice pawn breakthrough motif for black. Black can simplify the position with the move d5 and simply really challenge white's central control that white has built here. So in the game, here the fun already starts. Stockfish and NNUE played the prearranged line e5. So as I said, Leela C0 won also the game from white's perspective in this particular line. Stockfish and NNUE also won this game in this particular line, but still I think Stockfish game is much more attractive because Stockfish played here a really nice tactical battles. Leela C0's game was, I think, really a more positional struggle, so that's why I decided to show you the Stockfish game. Not that I have anything against Leela C0. For a Leela C0 fanboy club, I still love Leela C0 as much as I love Stockfish NNUE. So after move e5, here bishop to b2, bishop to g2, attacking the rook. We have e takes f6. This was still prearranged. G6. There is really a wild line. This wasn't prearranged, of course, but here is the problem. After move queen to f6, if you take with the queen, you can maybe use this line as an opening trap. Then queen to g4. You see we're attacking the bishop, and if you take, then with bishop to g5, the queen is trapped, which is really incredible, really wild stuff. I think many great players will fall for this. Will simply take with the queen, and then queen to g4 with bishop to g5 is simply winning here for white. So that's why you have to play g6. We have bishop to g5, and now d5. This was still prearranged, and after queen to g4, we have bishop to h1, and from this point on, the engine had to calculate the position for themselves. So here, Stockfish NNUE played the move queenside castle. Leela C0 played also queenside castling in this particular moment of the game. In the game, we have d takes c4, and now bishop to c2. We don't want to take the pawn. It's not about pawns anymore. It's really about activity. What we can notice now, that the main goal of white here is to go with our queen here somewhere, queen to h4, queen to h6, and then deliver checkmate here on g7. This can be met, an immediate queen to h4 can be met with rook to e8, and if you try queen to h6, then this bishop can come here to f8 and can protect this very weak g7 square. So that's why it's not possible immediately. We have to play first our great setup. In the game, bishop to b7 played by Leela C0, and now knight to h3. We have rook to e8, and now queen to h4. Here, in my opinion, I've analyzed now this game many times, and I think from this point on, black is slightly worse. I think black should have proceeded simply with the move bishop to f8. As I said, I let the engine work here, and I try to see many lines which are good for black. I would love this move here for black because it's protecting this very important square g7. You see now that black will have many troubles to defend this position, because what we can notice now, that black has already weakened the pawn structure. This bishop is aiming also render square g6. We can use sometimes knight to f4, the knight here on f4, and maybe sacrifice some more material just in order to open the position in front of the king. Here bishop to f3 was played by Leela C0. As I said, let's see possible continuation. I think bishop to f8, we're trying maybe d5. We want to break the position here on the queen side in the center. We want to challenge the queen on the d file. If e takes d5, knight to f4, you don't basically protect this pawn with c6 because you're blocking out again your bishop. I think queen to d6 could be a possibility, but now for knight to d5, bishop to d5, knight to d5, you have to develop fast, I think. But even after knight to e7, we can maybe give up the queen here, but still I think it's playable. You see black has two rooks for the queen, has I think now a simplified position. Again, a queen to h6 move can be met with bishop to f8. Now it's time to get use of the open files here on the e file, and maybe continue simply to push pawns here on the queen side. We would then have here 4 versus 2 pawn majority on the queen side. I think this could be playable for black. But after move bishop to f3, you see now the problems. It gives, I think, Stockfish now a nice game because Stockfish played rook to g1. We get challenged, but we want to bring the rook really on the best square on the board. It's of course on the g file, where we could have some tactics. As I said, we have here the opportunity to play knight to f4 and even sacrifice something here around the square g6. Now comes e5. Here, if you try bishop to b7 to retreat again, then knight to f4 could be a possibility, but then queen to d4, queen takes d4 leads now, I think, into simplified line after knight takes g6. Okay, here queen takes h4, knight takes h4. There are now discovered attack possibilities. You have to play something like king to h8, and then we could retreat here. But I think, again, this bishop to f8 could be a nice defensive setup. But after the move bishop to b7, which is the first suggested line here for black on my computer at home, I think white can play here really a sneaky move, bishop to h6, and now if you try to challenge the bishop, we could go here something like bishop to g7 and simply play knight to h4, and again we would black would have, I think, big trouble here. If you try to play something like knight to c6 to get another defender into the game, then I think bishop takes g6. You see how this tactic is really dangerous, so black has always to take care of this potential tactic. After something like h takes g6, we can even try rook takes g6, and if you take, we will then have bishop to g7, and you cannot protect anymore this position. So really wild stuff already. You see many tactical threats. This bishop and rook activity around the square g6 is always something that black has to take care of. Here in the game, after the move rook to g1, Leela C0 tried the move e5, and it is of course a liberating line, at least it seems so. Now Stockfish NNUE plays a very calm move, bishop to d2, again with the same idea to play knight to g5 and simply attacking here the h7 weakness. So here in the game, knight to d7 was played. If you try queen takes d4, it seems also like a logical choice, but then you have really some troubles because there is this intermediate move bishop to e4, which is really wild. We're sacrificing one bishop. If you take the bishop, if you take the knight here on c3, then we have bishop takes c3, and if you try something like queen to d5, you see we have queen to h6, and you cannot protect anymore the checkmate threat here on g7. So it's really wild. If you try to take the bishop, again nothing dramatically has changed. Again, we'll simply play knight takes d5, or queen to knight to g5 is also an opportunity here. So it's really wild here already for black. So you could maybe try, let's go back. As I said, knight to d7 was played. If you try here e takes d4, then again it's even worse. Here knight to g5. If you try bishop to h5, then we have queen to h5. See, you cannot protect anymore this position. G takes h5, then you get bishop to h7. There is only one good square, the square on f8. If you try king to h8, then you get the fork, of course, here on f7. So that's why if you try king to f8, then knight to e4. It's really a wild move. It's basically game over here for black, because we're threatening here the checkmate on g8. You would be forced to give up the queen, but it's not about the queen now immediately. It's a really wild line. You have rook to g8 after king to e7. Here knight to d5. This other knight comes into the game, and now we take the rook. King takes e8, and now it's time to take out the queen here with knight to f6. Again, it comes with a check. The problem is now you cannot attack the knight and maybe capture this knight, so you would be forced again to move the king somewhere here, and now it's time to take the bishop with the bishop or with the knight. So these were the lines after queen to d4 and e takes d4. So here Leela C0 tried something else, which seems like a natural idea to get more defenders into the game, at least to defend this position somehow, and also counter-attack here, trying to take out this very annoying pawn. This is really one of the most annoying pawns that I've seen in my life. It's really causing many troubles here for black. In the game now, knight to g5, again with the same idea, and here comes knight to f6. If you try bishop to h5, again to lock the position here on the h file, then knight to h7 wins the game immediately. After king to h7, we would then have here a checkmate. Queen takes h5. You see, you cannot take because of this bishop's activity. King to g8, and now rook to g6. This would be really wild stuff that Stockfish has prepared here. After f takes g6, queen takes g6, it's again of course a checkmate. So again, if you try here h5, then we'll simply take out the bishop, and we'll have, I think, a comfortable game. So that's why here after the move knight to d7, knight to g5, here knight takes f6 was played. We're protecting now our h7. In the game we have d takes e5. We're counter-attacking. We have now attacked two pieces. We have attacked the bishop and also the knight in the game, and bishop to c3 was played. If you try here knight to h5, it's again not a good choice because knight to f3 will happen. Here h5 doesn't bring again so much because we'll simply take, and then afterwards we can also take out this bishop, and again there are maybe even some tactical threats around the square g6. So here d takes e5, we have bishop to c3, bishop to c3, and now comes knight to h5, trying again to lock the h file. Here queen to c4 was played. If you try here maybe something like Bishop to d5, it's not good. Of course, we'll simply take out the knight, and then this pawn on h7 is hanging, so you have to lose one piece here. After knight to h5, Stockfish NNUE found a great way to continue the attack with queen to c4. First, we're attacking here the weak f7 pawn, and if you try now to protect this with rook to e8, then again we have some e6 possibilities. This could be also very dangerous, or we can immediately take out the knight. Is, I think, again winning simply for white. So in the game, after move queen to c4, we have queen to d5. The problem is now this move is protecting everything, but at least temporarily. But the problem is now this bishop cannot retreat anymore. The bishop is basically locked here. After the move queen to h4, we have queen to c6, and now comes queen to h3. We're attacking the bishop. If you try bishop to d5 here to retreat with the bishop, it's again really wild, because we have queen to h5. Pardon me, queen to h5 is not possible. We have e6. Here e6 would again break the position. If you try bishop to e6, then queen to h5. If you take the queen, then you get a very cool checkmate here with knight takes e6. Discovered attack. This knight is taking over here of the square f8. You cannot escape here to h8 because this bishop is covering that square. You could maybe just bring the queen here with queen to g2, rook to g2, and it would be game over. So queen to h3, you see this bishop is twice attacked. You cannot retreat with bishop, so that's why rook to d8 was played, and now queen takes f3, queen takes f3, and now knight takes f3. This mess is finally over. We have now a new position in which Stockfish NNUE has two bishops for the rook, but is also down a pawn, so the material is about equal, but still this bishop's activity, I think, is simply too much to handle. Both of them are aiming still against the king. What we want to do is simplify the position now to get some kind of a compact setup. We don't want to lose some more material. We don't lose some more pawns. If maybe black grabs another pawn, then it could be risky. So that's why it's time now to slow down the pace of the game here. Knight to f4, bishop to d1. We have b5. We have king to c2, a6, and now a3. We have c5. You see, Leela c0 is trying here the queenside attack. Is trying to get something out of this pawn majority with this 3 versus 2 situation here on the queen side. We have rook to g4 attacking the knight, knight to d5, and now bishop to a5 attacking the rook, rook to d7. We have bishop to d2, and now f6. We want to break this position because this pawn is very annoying. Again, it is not allowing these rooks to come into the game. But the good setup about this bishop is that, again, black cannot get somehow this rooks on the second rank. If black manages to do that, if black manages to get the pieces on the second rank, then I think it could be very risky position for white. But still, this is after e takes f6, still a better position for Stockfish. And e knight takes f6, and now rook to g1. We have c4, we have king to c1, knight to e4. I'm sure that I would probably lose this game with white if I would play against a stronger opponent, because it's really unclear what Stockfish is doing here. Stockfish is trying, as I said, to get some kind of a good setup here. Bishop to e3 first, keeping the position compact, first gluing these pieces together. We don't want to have loose pieces on the board. After move rook to d5, we have h4, rook to f5, we have king to b1, king to h8, rook to g2, and now after rook to d5, bishop to c2 attacking the knight, king to g7, and now rook to g4 again attacking the knight, knight to c5. Here you could maybe try something like bishop takes c5, rook to c5, but again, it's very risky. You don't want to give up your bishop pair. The strength of the bishop pair, especially in such an open game like this, is very important. So that's why here Stockfish NNUE continue with knight to g5. We have knight to d3, and now b3. So this wasn't played in the game, h6 was played, but if you try, for instance, c takes b3, then we can take bishop to b3, and you see you have troubles to get your rook on a good square, because we have now some opportunities even to play h5 to open somehow the h file. There are also threats with knight to e6 getting a very annoying check. So here, if you try, for instance, rook to d6, then bishop to d4 is also a possibility. So many great attacking possibilities here for white. If you try to escape with the king, then you get to fork. This could be maybe one of the tactics that you should be aware of. So after move knight to g5, as I said, b3, we have h6, knight to f3, rook to c8, we have rook to e4, rook to f5, and now knight to d2, keeping again the pieces glued together. We have knight takes f2, and now first to check, rook to rook to e7, king to f6, but now we're going after this pawn. Very important move. Knight to d3. We have bishop takes h6. We have grabbed another pawn. We have rook to e8. Then now first a check. We're taking a pawn. Rook to e6. We have bishop to g5. The check first. King to e5, and now we're trading off more pieces. And now comes, I think, a very good move here by Stockfish NNUE, a4. This move gives white the opportunity to create a pass pawn, because when we watched this position, and maybe if you could just imagine this position without these two pawns and without these two pawns, then I think white could black could maybe get a draw here. But in order to win this game, I think white has to create a pass pawn, and in order to deflect more pieces towards the queen side, because there's 3 pieces on the board. We want to push 1 pawn and then force basically black to give up maybe the rook or the knight for this extra pawn that we have. Although black can also create the pass pawn here or maybe on the c file, but our king is very near to the action, so that's why I think this move a4 was now the main strategical goal of this endgame a4. We have b takes a4, and now after b takes c4 we have a new position, which okay, both black and white have a pass pawn, but this is simply winning here for black because the knight is also attacked. We have knight to e5, and now bishop to f5. We have king to f5, and now it's simply time to get this pawn. And here in the next couple of moves, after move c takes d6, king to d6, in this position Leela c0 resigned. So incredible wild game. As I said, let's go back. I'm not sure if this line is something playable, if that's maybe a surprise moment. So here after e takes f6, you see g6 has to be played. That's the most important thing. But now bishop to g5. Remember here queen to f6 follows, loses the game with queen to g4 followed with bishop to g5. Really wild stuff. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. Really mad stuff. Leela c0, as I said, won the game also with the white pieces. The result is equal. Still will have, I think, really great superfinal, although many draws are played, but that's something that we have expected. I think these engines are so strong. They're calculating these tactics. When they're maybe slightly worse, they can get out of this mess with some great tactical possibilities and with great calculations. So far, I think it was a cool final, and I think we'll have also some fun in this 100 match game. So okay, meanwhile you can watch my other commented chess games played by computers. Here is the link, and if you want to see maybe the humans battling in their best chess games, check out my best chess games of all time series. Here's also the link, and if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.